Welcome to the stream. Happy Thursday, Horror Story Club. We are back. This could be a big one, folks. If we get to the other side of this next hour and a half, 2, 4, 5 hours with a full understanding of how to write a traditional Gothic ghost story, I'm not ruling that out. I'm not ruling out that we will achieve that. Welcome everyone. Welcome to Horror Story Club. Tell us where you're writing in from. We're going to get into it shortly.
Yes.
There's a bell out on the street. Sarah,
Perfect.
Do you want to tell us who you are, why you're here,
Yeah.
what is up?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Sarah Ray Werner. I am a writer and podcaster who lives in the Midwestern United States. And basically, I'm just here to learn as much as I can from these short stories. I really enjoyed The Ash Tree, which is our selection for this week. And yeah, do you want to introduce yourself as well, Asa?
Sure.
Or do you need me to vamp for a bit?
No, that was great.
Okay.
There is this bell.
I didn't know if the bell was still going. Yeah.
I live in Mexico City. We'll use this as part of the introduction.
Perfect.
They collect trash in Mexico City by going around street by street with a bell.
Oh.
And that alerts you to bring your trash out onto the street. I think it's going to continue for a moment. So I'm going to let you vamp.
Okay.
Do you want to tell us who M.R. James is and what this story is?
Sure. Okay. I actually, when I was reading this, they kept referring to him as James, and I kept thinking of Henry James, who wrote The Turn of the Screw, which is another supremely famous Gothic ghost story. But this is M.R. James, and this is a story that was published in 1904, and it is written in this very strange, like, nested narrative. I don't know what else to call it, but it's fiction, but it purports to pull from multiple sources. So I think I'd like to talk a little bit about that and what that sort of narrative device does. But should I just go ahead and do a quick summary of the story?
No, just
you good?
The
bell is good.
chilling.
Okay, good.
I'm Asa Merritt. If you don't know me, I'm a writer. I'm a horror writer. I run a horror fiction collective in Mexico City, where I live. And this coming October, we're putting on a show of ghost stories of lots of different writers writing ghost stories. And this is one of 3 weekly streams that I do with my friend, colleague, peer, and someone I admire, Sarah Ray Werner. The three of us do 3 streams a week. For context, this is part of our own sort of personal process of trying to become better writers, better speculative fiction writers. And if it's your first time here, you are entering into week 3 of Horror Story Club, where Sarah and I are working our way through this anthology of short horror stories. The greats are in this story. We're reading them 1 story a week to learn from them, take things away that we can apply for our own writing. On Wednesdays, we do this with sci-fi short stories. We have a sci-fi club. And then last but not least, on Fridays, we actually write. So every Friday, we dig up a submission opportunity, a publication opportunity to share with you, get together and write. We've got a Discord. We'll put that in the comments where conversation continues outside of these discussions. Anyway, today we are going to talk about how to write a ghost story. We're going to talk about The Ash Tree. I, as part of prep today, read M.R. James's kind of how-to guide on how to write a ghost story. So we're going to see a real kind of clear, this is how you do it. From a certain kind of ghost story. This is a clear tradition. This is the English ghost story. So how M.R. James says to write a ghost story is a specific kind of thing, but not always do we get the masters giving us how-to guides, and we did get that with M.R. James. So we're going to build that into today's talk, and additionally, we're going to apply those ideas, see if they actually were used in The Ash Tree. Let us know in the comments if you read this story. Let us know if you're here. Welcome. I hope everyone got a chance to read this story. But yes, proceeding. Let's what's the quick hit here? What's this story about?
The quick hit, and I won't even go to like narrative sublayers and everything. I'm just going to keep it plot simple. So basically, there is a house, and it's like sorry. Okay. I was going to like just go into layers again. Look at me. So there is a house, and this starts in 1690. There is a house, a manor called, I wrote it down, Castringham Hall, and its proprietor is named Sir Matthew Fell. And outside is this ash tree. So that's our setup. Sir Matthew Fell is, it turns out, one of our protagonists, kind of. One night he spies this old lady whose name is Mrs. Mothersole climbing the ash tree outside of his house, and it creeps him out, and he reports it, and she keeps doing it. She does it under 3 full moons. And then he says, well, you know, as a deputy sheriff, which I guess is a thing, he reported it to the board of people who burn witches. And they decided Mrs. Mothersole is a witch, even though a lot of people stood up and talked for her. They decided, no, she needs to die. So she was hanged with several other women accused of being witches. And as she was being, I believe, hanged, yes, the gallows, she offered no resistance and just looked at them with a poisoned glare and said, there will be guests at the hall. Okay, so years later, or excuse me, shortly thereafter, not years later, basically, for whatever reason, Sir Matthew that night decides to make a will, which is good because he's dead the next morning. He is, quote, dead and black. And there's this whole like really cool look into like a 1600s like murder investigation. They decide his drink wasn't poisoned, etc. It wasn't poison unless it was like injected. I'm going way too long with this. Basically, a generation goes by, Sir Matthew II, nothing happens. Richard the third, or the third heir, Richard, so who is Matthew Fell's grandson, decides, I don't like this graveyard here. So he like digs it up because he hasn't seen Poltergeist. And they unearth the coffin of Mrs. Mothersole, the person they burned as a witch. There's no body in the coffin. And they're like, oh, that's weird. Bye. And so Sir Richard goes about his business. He is making a lot of like horror movie mistakes. If there was a basement, he would totally go into it. He is laughing with a friend who is the descent. You don't need to know that either. Sorry. I get really excited. I thought this was an amazing story. So basically, what he does is during the initial investigation, there was this, they called it a sort or a sorte, where you like cast lots and like open up the Bible and it tells you your fortune. You point to a spot. And, this was like my favorite thing. Sir Richard does this in jest, and it says, thou shalt seek me in the morning and I shall not be. And he's like, ha, isn't that funny? It's like, dude. Anyway, so the next morning, Sir Richard is dead, and there's all these things that start crawling out of the tree. It's delightfully horrifying. It is not what I expected. What am I missing, Asa?
Well, okay. I that is a great summary. I think that the sort of,
but
yeah, oh, listen, we're here. We're on the same team. We're on the same team as all of us. I think the seemingly convoluted nature of that summary speaks to what's actually going on in this story. You know, you use that word nesting. The story is not exactly, you know, a cowboy set out to, a knight set out for the castle, and
right.
like, you know, this is so I think that is actually part of the essence of it. So yes, so in lieu of reading this twice like I normally do, I went down this rabbit hole of reading about M.R. James's like how to write a ghost story.
Tell me
and
more.
So I think today we could do like maybe throwing this out there on the spot. I think that your recall of some of these details is going to be a little stronger than mine have been in the past. And so what I would love is to be like, this is one thing that he says you have to do for a ghost story. And together, maybe you especially can help us like figure out whether or not that is the case.
That's
so
perfect.
His first thing of a ghost story is there has to be the appearance of truth. It has to feel like a true world. And his definition of a true world is one in which ghosts are not true. Okay. So it's like reality. It's like these, for him, a ghost story is not like the kind of like creepypasta, like, did you hear about the thing where it like might be real? It's like, no, this is the real world and ghosts are not of this world. And so we're introducing an other.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if in this story, Ash Tree, you could point to anything in the beginning where he sets this up as this is the regular world that in which ghosts are not real. You know, does he set that up?
Absolutely. I think he sets it up in several ways. The first way he sets that up is he starts us off. I know I talked about this yesterday during Sci-Fi Story Club, not Sci-Fi Horror Club. He talks about what the house is like, and he talks about the land, and he talks about, I would really like to live here and I would decorate it this way. And it's like this very just conversational, like strangely conversational. I don't even ever know if we get the narrator's name. The narrator is this character who, I believe it's in first person. Yes, I have to tell you of a curious series of events which happened in such a house as I have tried to describe. We don't know who this is, but he's telling this story, and this is to the second point. So in addition to like just a very like dry, calm, normal beginning, our narrator is also pulling from several primary and secondary sources for this tale that he's telling. So I was imagining this narrator who is referencing and there's even stuff in here that's written in Old English. So it's presented very scientifically. And he even gives, like I mentioned earlier, the scientific method from the 1600s in doing the detective work to find out how the first Sir Matthew died. So they're setting it up as very real. Yes. They're setting it up as this very real world. And he even says a couple of times that, you know, oh, this practice of like hanging witches or burning witches, the witch trials. It's like, obviously none of these women are witches. Like the narrator is like, obviously, come on, this is the real world. So I think it sets it up precisely by that. And he cites his sources, even though his sources are fictional, which I really appreciate. So yeah, I think yes. That's my answer on that.
I love that. Yeah, like incorporating real like sources, incorporating the kind of production and packaging of credibility. Yeah. You know, like citing these like persons and like the account that came down from so and so just like puts us in this like no, this is not a world where there's like ghosts and fairies and dragons. Like this is like supported by newspapers and accounts. I noted that.
And something that it reminded me of, and this made me really excited too, is not necessarily the Blair Witch Project so much as maybe other later found footage sort of, and they lend themselves very well to horror, but different found footage things. Lake Mungo is a really good example of this. The Black Tapes podcast is a really good example of this. Pieces of fiction pretending to be real, and you end up wondering, well, wait, is this real? Because they're citing their sources. We're seeing like the rear view mirror. We're seeing the convenience store footage. Like this has to be real, right?
Right.
So
100%.
I love it.
Okay. Well, so after that, this guy's second sort of idea of what makes a good ghost story is he calls it a pleasing terror. And he says, James maintains the sole object of inspiring a pleasing terror in the reader is the true aim of the ghost story. What do you make of that? Like, let's just kind of like hang out with that idea for a second of a pleasing terror.
I feel like this one's going to be a little bit more subjective. But for me, and maybe this even means something different for you, a pleasant terror. For me, I was delighted the whole time I was reading this. It kept me engaged. I was wondering where it was going. And even with all of the fake historical references, like I didn't find it dry or dull. I was eating this up. And so for me, it was pleasant in that way. And it was also pleasant because with the narrative structure of it being like sourced from different historical documents, it gives you a sense of distance from the action. And so you're not necessarily like there in the front row getting splattered with blood and gore. you are reading this or even hearing it from a narrator who's several times removed from what's going on and what went on during this story. So I think for me that kept it feeling cozy, and it kept it feeling, yeah, I was just entertained and delighted, especially that last imagery.
It really takes
Yeah.
off there at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so the nestingness, we have primary sources, we have accounts, we have nestingness. What was your experience as a reader?
I felt like I was. Have you ever read The Fisherman by John Langham?
It is on my shelf. I
Okay.
have not read it.
Okay, when you read it, let me know, because
Okay.
I felt like we were with the fisherman, or the guy in the general store or hotel or wherever it is, who's like bringing all of these clips off the wall and like showing you, like, here's this newspaper, so this house burned down in 1635, and then here's the tree, and like I feel like I'm being shown personally and talked to personally by this narrator. And again, I don't know if you felt the same way. This can be very, very, very subjective, but even the fact that it's super casual lent itself to that too. On page 45, he says, one morning, and then in hyphens, it was in 1754. Like, he forgot to tell us that. And he's like, oh yeah, let me remind you. So yeah, I think all of that for me works really well. It was cozy, it was charming, and I felt like I was privy to a secret story as it unfolded.
I like that. I like applying this, like almost like this aesthetic idea of like cozy to the actual storytelling. And of course, Lore Huntress. There's a great writer in our Discord, Lore Huntress, who shared a audio version of this, which I listened to, and it was so cozy.
Because it's read by Christopher Lee, right?
Yeah, exactly. I like that. That is like a really cool idea, that we're being kind of enveloped in an experience. It's almost like this is the experience of being told a ghost story is an independent thing to the actual ghost story.
Yeah, you're not experiencing it first. Like, the stakes aren't high. Like, that's what was so interesting. There's no stakes here, because the stakes usually are what create tension. If you're reading, if you're empathizing with the main character, if you're watching a movie and you're projecting yourself into the main character, the stakes being high for that character mean the stakes are high for you. There's no stakes for this main character. He is just, let me tell you.
That's a great point. Yeah, so far removed. Yeah, like hundreds of years from some of these actions.
Yeah.
So another one of M.R. James's kind of tips in terms of how to write an amazing ghost story, he says, don't explain the machinery. He says the greatest successes in terms of ghost stories have been scored by the authors who can make us envisage a definite time and place and give us plenty of clear-cut and matter-of-fact detail, but who, when the climax is reached, allow us to be just a little in the dark as to the working of their machinery. We do not want to see the bones of the theory of the supernatural. So this cuts at the heart, I think, of what we're trying to figure out how to do as horror writers, is when to show, when to hold back. We create terror by omission, by suggestion. How does he do this in this particular story? When does he decide to kind of really show us, and when does he hold back? And what is its mastery there? Like, what was your experience of it? Where did you see it at work?
First and foremost, can you read that thing about the bones again?
I can. Yes. He says, we do not want to see the bones of the theory of the supernatural.
Okay, I love that, because also literally on page 44, we do not see her bones. So they open up the casket and her bones are literally not there. And that is a main point. Okay, I had to get that out of my brain because it was just like, hey, you should say this. But there's so many points that it's very thoughtful what he reveals and when he reveals it, and how he even talks to us about the characters. And he kind of even tells us, like, okay, Sir Richard's an idiot. Like, he just pretty much tells us that outright. That's not something like in a not normal story, in a lot of other stories, that would be something that we experience through like show don't tell. But he's like, no, I'm just going to tell you this. Now, what I'm not going to tell you is, you know, he's very good about, well, I'm going to use show not tell again. So he never tells us that anything is coming in the window. He just lets us know that at night, the first Sir Matthew leaves his window open, and then Sir Richard, when he inherits or when he decides to sleep in that bedroom because the other bedroom is not good enough for him. He also leaves the window open because they air it out because nobody has been in there since Sir Matthew died and it smells moldy. Like he leaves the window open, and without anyone saying like anything, that he's going to die tonight. Now, yeah. Okay, wait.
So, well, I want to parse that. It's like, well, yeah. How do we know? Because yes, I had that feeling too. It's like, okay, the window is getting left open. Oh my gosh, this guy is going to die. I'm experiencing something as a reader. I'm experiencing dread. We never hear about something entering the window, but sure enough, he's dead. So how do we know? Like, where is that planted?
It's planted in a lot of small ways. And this is, I think, really clever. This is really clever. And I think another reason why it feels so cozy, because the narrator is revealing things that the narrator knows, and the narrator is being selective even with those things. The narrator is being a little cheeky with us sometimes about what he lets us know. There's this descendant of the vicar, who is now a vicar himself, who initially visited the first Sir Matthew on the night he died, and his grandson visits the grandson of Sir Matthew on a night. I don't know. Nothing is probably going to happen. His window's open. I don't know. Like he leaves us these little clues. And I really appreciated that, because you're like, oh, this is like, hey, Kashiki, we're talking about M.R. James's wonderful story, The Ash Tree, and it's super fun and exciting. And we're also learning how to write from M.R. James himself. So this is very exciting time for me.
Welcome, Kashiki.
Yes, welcome. But yeah, so he is explicit about some things. He gives us bursts of imagery sometimes. So when we see Sir Richard, who is, at this point, we know he's going to die because of context clues and because he's presented as sort of a jerk. It reminded me a little bit of The Triumph of Mechanics, which we read yesterday for Sci-Fi Story Club, where you have these like really oblivious people who terrible things are about to happen to, and they're so oblivious they almost deserve it. And so Richard kind of deserts this. Like he's a
jerk. He's a jerk to the woman who works for him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He tells her maybe that's how people talk to servants, but he actually says like, yes, go away, like in that exact tone.
Right.
So, but yeah. So where I was going with that was that night when he is asleep with the window open. I think is it the housekeeper? Someone opens the door and sees all of these different round head-shaped things all over Sir Richard. And you're like, what? And there is this little hint in the very beginning when we're looking at back with the original Sir Matthew. He's like, yeah, I saw this like weird little animal on the ash tree. And yeah, it was probably a squirrel, but I think it had more than 4 legs. It was probably a squirrel. Yeah, it was probably a squirrel, dude. Yep. And so that was like our first hint. Our second hint is when we hear of, it's a very like, I kind of want to find the description. It's a really visceral description.
Yeah, this is like this is the second death.
Yes.
That you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah, I think like while you're looking for that, when you were talking, I was really thinking about how the reference of the squirrel that keeps us very much in the real world. It's like we're still describing the reality around us in terms of a world in which ghosts do not exist.
Right.
Which goes back to his like first idea of the pretense of truth.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. I'm just going through here and even just looking at one other thing. trying to find where the heads are. I love the heads.
Yeah, I mean, this is cool. I'm really glad that you're here to steward me through this a little bit, just because, like, for me, there were so many almost like false leads a little bit. For example, like the text in the Bible.
Yes.
So like if you're watching this and you didn't read this story, there's these little messages in the Bible, but there's never really a payoff on that, or was there? But I guess I did feel like there was like a lot of kind of false leads, maybe, or like just like this matters to the secret of the story, which then didn't reveal it. And I don't know, maybe I'm just so conditioned by contemporary horror films, contemporary commercial horror films, where it all kind of is revealed at the end in some ways, like the origin of the ghost and its mission and why it's there and all of this, that I felt resistant to this level of ambiguity. It's like, I almost had the experience of like, do I need to be a more sophisticated reader to experience the chills that are being intended here? I sort of had that crossed my brain.
Yeah, well, and I don't think so. I don't think you're off on that. I mean, I experience with a lot of like the classics and everything with older stuff. Sometimes it's hard for me to get into just because it's not in the tone that I'm used to reading, or because the historical, like you can feel the distance more. I think for this story, it worked for me because he was acknowledging the historical distance, and he was like pointing out how they spelled poison with a Y in the 1600s. And so it kind of became part of like the story, part of the joke. I don't know if I want to call it a joke, but like it was a little cheeky nod to that, I think, at least. So
yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes sense. That helps. Yeah.
Okay.
That helps. Yeah, there was. Yeah, because I keep coming back to this word camp more often than I ever thought I would.
Especially like specifically in relation to
a
the
little
ash
bit.
tree.
It's just so hammy, kind of like this old English, that we're like, he's just looking at us with a straight face and being like, here's an excerpt from like Mr. Chrome's journal. Thou didn't think it was poison, and it's almost like performative in this way that actually does bring me back a little bit to yesterday too, where it's just like the lightness that lives in this text was very Lore Huntress.
Hey.
Hi, Lore. Just enjoying listening to you too. Well, thanks for saying hi. That makes. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah. So okay.
What else? I found the heads.
Oh, you did. Tell us about the heads.
I need to tell you about these heads. Okay.
No.
So, the head thing was important because it's when we change tense. So looking at this from a writing and storytelling standpoint, this is why I wanted to talk about this, because most of the story is told in like, oh, then he went into the study, then the guests came for dinner, then they looked at the ash tree. And it's a narrator who is omniscient. And then the tense immediately changes. It's so interesting. Page 47. Let's see. La la la. At last they agreed the rats must have come up through the ivy. And then the day passed quickly. They wished, the party dispersed to their rooms and wished Sir Richard would feel better. He's a little sick the night that he goes to sleep, where he's going to die the next day. And then immediately it says, and this is present tense, which you don't often see in a story from like the 1900s. And now we are in his bedroom with the light out and the squire in bed. It's literally ghost story around a campfire. Like, and now, my children, you shall hear. And he includes this we, which feels cozy. And because the narrator's there with you, it doesn't feel, even though you're a little bit closer to the action now, you don't feel threatened because there's still no stakes for you. And I really, really enjoyed that. And so I'm just going to read. This is like my favorite thing. There is very little light.
You're on 47 still, Sarah? 47?
Yep, bottom of 47.
Bottom of 47. Okay, gotcha. I'm with you.
Yes. Okay. The room is over the kitchen, so it changes to this present tense. There is very little light about the bedstead, but there is a strange movement. It seems as if Sir Richard were moving his head rapidly to and fro with only the slightest possible sound. Quick note, you see a lot of that in horror movie imagery, like the jittery, You see a lot of that glitch. And so I could totally see that in my mind. And now you would guess. So we're even in second person here. And now you would guess, so deceptive is the half darkness that he had several heads. This was so interesting. Round and brownish, which moved back and forward even as low as his chest. It is a horrible illusion. Is nothing more? And so it's even saying like, you're not really seeing this, except you are, but are you? There, something drops off the bed with a soft plump like a kitten. And I love that. It's so visceral. Like, you've heard a cat jump onto a floor. I know that sound. I heard it. And is out of the window in a flash. Another, and then 4 more, and then it's all quiet again. And this is maybe, I don't know if this is part of where you saw the campiness, but the narrator comes back in. It goes back into past tense. It goes back into the first person omniscient narrator. And this narrator reminds me in this omniscient voice that of the Bible passage that Sir Richard very facetiously pulled. Thou shalt seek me in the morning and I shall not be. And then we're back into past tense. Sir Richard is dead. And just, I thought that was so fascinating that it changed. I've not seen a story do this before. Change tense for like a paragraph and then back away. Okay, now you're in past tense again. It's like the narrator got really excited and was like, okay, now we're all here. And then he's like, okay, the exciting part's done. I'm just going to tell you the end, which is also exciting, but I don't know.
That. I love your love for that. I love that you pointed that out. I love that we are reading writers that are so confident and bold, and the confidence of that move. Yes, to be telling a story in a certain tense and just to like break out of it. Yeah. And again, not for long, just like this little burst, this sort of way in which the writer is kind of assuming a certain relationship with their reader. Ooh. And just owning it and being like, I've got you. We're almost at the end of the story. We're on this ride together. You know, you've come this far, so you're going to finish. And now we're there. Yeah. Putting us into the present. So cinematic, you know, really just, it reads like stage directions in a screenplay.
Yeah.
You know, in the present tense like that. Yeah. So I'm so glad you pointed that out.
It was it was just one of those things. Well, and like in modern times, you know, if you're looking to submit a story, the editor might be like, oh, you accidentally switched tenses here. And it's like, no, this is very intentionally done. And I'm just curious what we could get away with today as well with all of these different, because I noticed this in our story from yesterday too, about the narrative point of view. We're always focused on Mr. Hopkins in yesterday's story, The Triumph of Mechanics. But it switches from the industrialists to the mayor to someone else. And I don't know if that would fly today. I think they would say, oh, this is really too ambiguous. So
yeah, hard to say. I mean, this is something I'm thinking about just broadly in my life and career as a writer. I do think short stories are a space where invention and formal deviation is embraced and accepted. It does seem that way. So maybe
that's heartening. I love to hear that. I love that.
Yes. Oh. I think that. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Asa comes to this through playwriting and screenwriting ? Yeah. And a focus on the short story. I'm coming at this from like a novel point of view. And so we've been looking at the last few weeks of how different it is to tell a story in short form than long form. And what would fly in short form is, like Asa just said, a lot more open, a lot more, open to creativity and to experimentation, I think.
And it's over before, you know, I think it's over before you can be accused of like, you're not consistent with your storytelling rules. You know?
My question to you is, did you notice it? Like just reading through the story, or did you get swept along and not notice?
I was swept along. I was I didn't.
That's the point. That's the point.
Yeah. Yes. Narrative Vault, welcome.
Hello.
Narrative Vault says, hi, I really like the connection to James's writing tips. yes, let's continue through this list of things that James, M.R. James, author of The Ash Tree and many other iconic ghost stories, says makes a perfect ghost story.
So we're on number 3, or this is going to be number 4?
So I skipped 3.
Okay.
3 was no gratuitous bloodshed or sex, which is,
Sure.
I think generally in line with this idea of restraint that we're, that like by taking a step back, he uses this word reticence. That's how we're going to feel more is by like restraint. The last one, so let me just go through them. The pretense of truth, we talked about that. This is the real world interrupted by unreal things. A pleasing terror, like you said, kind of choose your own adventure. But I think it's important that this is actually not horror. Like that it is like, I like to use that word cozy, that this is not unnerving you. No gratuitous bloodshed or sex. Number 4, no explanation of the machinery. Number 5, setting. Those of the writer's and reader's own day. And this is interesting because I think that this story violates that. Let me read what his actual writing tip is.
Yeah.
He says, the setting and personages are those of the writer's own day. They have nothing antique about them. This mode is not absolutely essential to success, but is characteristic of the majority of successful stories. The seer of ghosts must talk something like me and be dressed, if not in my fashion, yet not too much of, this is old English, not too much like a man in a pageant, if he is to enlist my sympathy. And then this blogger says, in other words, contemporary setting to both writer and hence reader is essential to bring the fear home. Stories set long ago and or far away won't chill us as much as the ones to which we can relate. Lots to unpack there. Like, I'd love to hear how you feel about that idea generally, and also, like, again, specifically because this story doesn't really do that because this is stuff in the past.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, like, he even makes fun of the present. He's like, Sir Richard totally ruined this house by putting up all these Italian statues everywhere. And he, like, stuccoed one side of the brick, which used to be antique and beautiful. So he's almost like not regretting, but he shows a fondness for the past that I wouldn't expect from that writing tip. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And there is that, he does make fun of, I think, a little bit of that 1600s. That would be the 17th century, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The 17th century writing, the spelling, the capitalization, the randomness of all of that. He makes fun of the past a little bit. And so he's saying, like, we modern folks don't talk like that. But it's also interesting reading this story, 120 years after it was written, because now this is historical fiction, but it did have an immediacy to it. True. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think this is a really cool big question around. I love this. This to me is a question that just spawns questions in the most kind of exciting way. And traditionally we're taught, we are feeling what the protagonist is feeling. Our emotional experience is alongside that of the protagonist. But as we know, we enjoy stories where the protagonist is in all different circumstances, times, histories. So it's interesting to me to probe this. And what he's saying in this advice is that, like, I need to feel this is real so that I can connect, so that I can experience the feelings that this character is feeling. And I don't really have a clear answer there. Like, I don't know if I connect more with sort of the characters of contemporary social realist fiction or, say, Luke Skywalker or what, or like a character that exists in another space. And it's like, because I think this kind of standard argument would be something to the effect of, like, well, we all love, we all, Romeo and Juliet, I just rewatched the old 90s Romeo and Juliet. It's like, we're still telling that story and we connect to it because we have all fallen head over heels. And it doesn't matter that it's a zillion years old. It doesn't matter that we have nothing and that we don't belong to royal families in Verona and all that, because that is the universal thing that we're connecting to. So I wish he were here, Mr. James, to kind of unpack that just a little bit more. I wonder if it gets at the same thing he's saying earlier about the pretense of truth. Maybe it's less about I can see me in the character, and it's more about like, this is not a fairy tale.
Right. Right.
Maybe
This
it's
is not
something
in
like
ye
that.
old times, right?
Yeah.
He wants it to be immediate and not as distant. Right. So
Right.
in telling this, so it's interesting in telling this largely historical story, he has a modern narrator walking us through it, and very pointedly modern narrator. He's like, I really like these houses and I want to move into one. Anyway, here's the story. And it does feel contemporary. It doesn't feel old. And when he does get into that ye old language, again, he kind of laughs at it. So I have a question though.
Yes.
We've mentioned, I think we've both said the word protagonist. Who is the protagonist in this story, Asa? Is there one?
No, I don't. But this is delicious. This is delicious. This is exactly what I was hoping for when we started this talk. Right, because I do think the nature of the yarn of a ghost story is to create an emotional experience that definitely is atmosphere, it's vibe, it's feeling, it's like echoes. It's not necessarily that we're on a hero's journey with a hero going through an emotional experience. Traditionally, a protagonist has an arc. I mean, this I also is like why I'm so hot on short stories right now. It's just like this, they can kind of just be this little flash and generate a feeling, and that is a win. So I mean, the thing that connects the story, I think, is ultimately the witch figure. I do think that is the motif that we begin with and then we finish with. But yeah, lore. It brought to mind the Salem witch trials and also the book Slewfoot, which was inspired by the trials. I have so many questions. Was she really collecting bits from the tree? Who buried her in the tree? Okay, yes. So, Laura, this is kind of like, I'm kind of right here with you because I had so many questions. I was like, this just feels like too many things, maybe. And it's like, because, right, hold on. So, if so many questions are unanswered, then it's just vibe, which maybe is the experience of a ghost story. So, but do you have answers to those questions, Sarah?
Well, I don't have like definitive answers, but I'm looking back at that one point that M.R. James made of not revealing the machinations to us. He very pointedly does not. The narrator doesn't even wonder, which I think is very interesting. He just refers to this document where they dug up the witch and there was no trace whatsoever in the coffin of her body, bones, or dust. Indeed, it is a curious phenomenon. Anyway, moving on. And like the narrator isn't even curious about it. And so I don't know if that's M.R. James making a point about, I'm really not going to show you the machinations here, or exactly like how aware he wants us to be of that. But that was a really interesting, I thought that was a really interesting thing. We don't know. And Laura, to your next point here, are the spiders ancient spirits? I don't think we know what they are.
Lore Huntress says, if you're just listening, are the spiders ancient spirits? Which reminds me of Anansi, who rose up against oppression, where the spiders protecting the body of the murdered woman who had lived in an oppressive society.
Yeah, I love that reading, and it reminds me of something we've been talking about too, which is the theory of like how you read something and where the meaning comes from in the story. I don't know if M.R. James would have known the story of Anansi. I know that I do, and like that's something that I learned growing up, and so it's really satisfying to think of that, the body of the murdered woman who lived in an oppressive society. But M.R. James isn't even really particularly sympathetic to Mrs. Mothersole. And those names, Mother Soul, right. Sir Matthew Fell. I mean, look at these names. Right. Sorry, small tangent. I just couldn't get over that.
Was your father a pastor?
Yes.
Sarah's father was a pastor. She knows these references ring true. I don't think James meant it that way. Just what brings to mind to me. Yeah, I think so
I
too.
like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
Right. So The ending. Okay. Did the ending scare you? Or sort of, how did the ending make you feel? Let me just do that. What did you feel at the end of this story?
I felt like I was part of a group watching something really bizarre unfold. So like the setting is it's sort of told not even from the eye, but the narrator sort of subsumes himself into this crowd of people who are watching the ash tree burn. And we are like this group of people. It's like a multiple point of view from a crowd, which I think everything's interesting. So I'm just going to say I think this is interesting yet again. And it really like slows down time and walks you through methodically. First, here's what happened. First at the fork, they saw a round body covered with fire. Next, this happened. Then this happened. And it was very interesting to me in that it was revealing things without really revealing, like you said, the machinations of why this was happening. We don't even know what those. I was thinking about Narrative Vault yesterday, mentioned tribbles, and I couldn't help but think of tribbles again and in the tree because they're these like fuzzy little guys, but they're supposed to be like, I think, gross and ugly. They're the size of a man's head, so they're kind of gross tribbles, but they are very spider-like. It says the remains of an enormous spider covered with grayish hair. And it's like, wait, are they heads if they have gray hair? And it's like, well, they said Mrs. Mothersole had black hair. I don't know if this is her. I don't know if this is like if she had been storing away body parts of other witches. It's real. That part is really not explained. But yeah, they're not tribbles.
I'm glad you gave us like some exact quote there. It's like,
yeah,
the what's described are the spiders. And, one thing that we don't see in this story, correct me if I'm wrong, is the word ghost anywhere.
Nope.
Right?
Because there's no ghosts.
There's no ghosts. This is not a world where ghosts live because
there's a
of
curse, maybe.
The pretense of truth.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's like, if anything, there's this like monster with this like crazy spider stuff. One thing I'm thinking about right now is The Reach by Stephen King. Here in Story Club a few weeks ago, we talked about Stephen King's The Reach, a really exquisite little tale about an old woman at the end of her life. That story is kind of like a ghost story. And one thing we observed about that was that there was nothing in that story certainly supernatural or certainly impossible until the very end with the hat. Up until that point, it was things that like could have been or could have been misperceived. And so I'm wondering when that gets broken in this story. I do think it gets broken much earlier, but here at the end is this like total explanation of an empty coffin, and there's the person who should be in the coffin. I don't know. Where I'm going with this, I think, is that to the extent that this has like a punch supernatural ending, is it sort of holds the most impossible to believe thing until the very end.
Boy, that's such a good question. And I'm thinking back now, because so many of the bad things that happen in the story, like you're right, they don't mention a ghost or like a disembodied hand that crawls in. It really sets things up that people get what's coming to them through like some kind of fate, right? It's like, oh, he just happened to leave the window open. Oh, he just happened to do this. And it doesn't say like that night the ghost opened the window. No, these people are in control of their situations.
Yes.
Richard decides to move into the room where his grandfather was murdered. And the middle Matthew, nothing bad happens to him because he didn't provoke anything. He didn't like bring any of this on himself. So I think that it's interesting because you're right, it's not a ghost. There's no ghost like playing tricks and like tee-hee. It is purely people acting on their own nature, the same nature maybe that caused Mrs. Mothersole to be hanged as a witch in the first place. And talking about the supernatural stuff too, I think the fact that it isn't explained, and I know this was maybe a frustration for you or maybe some other readers of this story, but the fact that the empty coffin wasn't explained, it's not explained how Mrs. Mothersoul's body was packed into the bottom of that tree. It's not explained what these head spiders are. Um, I think that if he had tried to explain it, it wouldn't have worked. I think it's an either all or nothing.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm disappointed by the lack of explanation. It's more of just, and maybe this is just trying to destroy the beauty of art through analysis, and just like acknowledge that there was an inner creative logic to what was withheld.
Mm.
The things that weren't explained, the mysteries of the universe of this story have its own code, and James is just confidently telling the story, and it's like, I don't need to know what was going on with the collecting bits from the tree, or I don't need to know how her body got into the ash tree. I don't need to know why it's the ash tree, which is the site of all of the things, because it's so confidently told. And that's like where, like, I just think fiction is really beautiful. It's like, we don't really, I mean, we can sit here and we are and will and continue to learn things, but like, what really makes this work is probably something that we'll never fully grasp.
One thing that did work for me, like thinking about, I was just, you sparked an idea in my brain. And that idea is, we are in a normal, quote unquote, present day for the time, scientifically thinking community. That's maybe why he brings in the Bible, because anything that's not explained by the supernatural, even the existence of a religion where miracles happen and there's mysticism and all this stuff, it leaves the door open just enough.
Yeah.
And I think that was, because it almost surprised me a little bit when they brought in was it called Sortes or Sorts, Sortes, where you open up the Bible, point to a passage 3 times, and that's your fortune. And I think that was, sure, it was there to be like a little creepy and to give us an omen of what was going to happen. But I think it was also there to present the possibility that there are supernatural forces. There's something weird going on here. We don't know what it is. And that's part of why it's so interesting. Like,
yeah, I think that's a really great point. I love that. Just sort of invoking religion in the fiction, because religion intrinsically is the site of where we aren't sure what's going on. And so by introducing that, we're signaling it's like there might be a ghost without saying the word ghost. I think that's a great point.
Thank you. Well, something you said sparked it, so thank you for that.
Good. Yeah. Well, that's what we're here for. Yeah. I mean, my principal experience here is I just feel like I need to read more of James's stories to kind of fully get it. That's partly where I'm at. Have you read other of his stories?
No, and I'm gonna just disappoint a lot of people. I'd never actually even heard of M.R. James until I opened up this anthology. So that's where I'm coming to this from. I was familiar with Henry James. I don't know if they're related in any way, but no, I'd never even heard of M.R. James. So yeah, I guess, did you dig up anything while you were looking up his like writing principles? Like,
dig up anything and
just on him? That's
I think that he is well, actually, you know what? We could read the little very short
the blurb.
Yeah, for context, if you're just joining the stream, this is the anthology that we're working through. It's called The Dark Descent edited by David G. Hartwell. And he writes these really great little intros to each story. And this one's quite short, so I'll just read it for everybody here. So we know more about this writer. M.R. James was the master of the ghost story, in which an evil from the distant past persists into the present and is visited upon us as a legacy.
I mean, yeah.
Apparently that's how like they all are.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. His antiquarian ghost stories are a body of work that codified a main tradition of horror for the 20th century. The weight of the past haunts us in Jamesian fiction, a bleak, stern moral landscape rich in detail. The Ash Tree, which we read, is thematically interesting in contrast to Hawthorne and Wellman as a witchcraft story. James looks back to J.S. Le Fanu as his paradigm. But the on-stage horror at the climax of the ash tree is James's own contribution, striking mantras. Yes. So that's really cool because, okay, this is useful for us because what this story is showing us is these things that we take for granted about a ghost story, a ghost coming back from the past to haunt us. You know, this had to kind of start somewhere. And it seems like what the editor is saying here is that M.R. James is really one of the people who first laid that foundation, that a ghost story is about something that should not have been bothered from the past that like comes back to continue bothering us. We take that for granted. And that's just a way to tell a ghost story that somebody named M.R. James kind of came up with, it seems like.
I like that. I like that perspective. I like that a lot. Okay. Yeah, because I don't know much about like the history of any of these horror elements. I only got into horror really maybe within the last 5 or 6 years. And so that is very fascinating to me.
Right. I mean, so we can take this opportunity to preview the next story.
Ooh.
So in this collection, we're moving forward next with Lucy Clifford and a story called The New Mother. I'm going to read the first sentence for good luck as we do. The children were always called Blue Eyes and the Turkey. I kind of want to keep reading more, but I kind of want to just leave it.
I know, like
I'm going to read that one more time. I'm going to read that. The children were always called Blue Eyes and the Turkey. So that's
feels very like Starsky and Hutch. Like,
yes.
Are they going to solve crime?
That is what we have ahead of us. Sarah, what else? Is there anything else for you for this story? I feel like I need to read this again. What I'm taking away is this pretense of truth, establishing the real world. I'm taking away using apocrypha, secondary sources. I'm taking away that. I'm taking away a continued willingness to omit information and trust that readers will have an experience based of that. Is there anything else that as a writer, you're like vibing from this that you feel will inform your own practice?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you asked that question. As I was reading this, I was so struck by, like we said earlier, how cozy it was. And I really want to experiment with that in horror. I've been telling people that my next audio drama is going to be a cozy horror. And people are like, what does that even mean? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to figure it out. And I think that this hints at that a little bit. It is, there are stakes, but they're distant from you, but in a way that you can still care about them and that you're still interested by the story. I really want to explore the cozy horror, like, and how that works and how it can exist.
Amazing. That is so exciting. I will look out. I will look out for that story. All right, y'all, over in the Discord. If you've been coming in on these streams and you're not in the Discord yet, like into the Discord, porfa, because we are building this community, building this club, building a community of writers and readers. I just put that in the link, and I think that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. I know we got a little bit of a late start. Tomorrow we will be writing 2 hours earlier. We're sticking with our 1 p.m. EST flash fiction, live writing sprints, writing vibes together.
I'm excited.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for being here. This has been this is probably my favorite thing that's happened in 2025. It's been a rough year. But meeting with you guys for Story Club has been just an absolute delight. So I'm very excited.
Amazing.
So, thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow or soon.
All right. Bye for now.